All right, friends, we are sharing a panel today and I'm super stoked. We've got 3 other individuals. So we are sharing 4 big energies today coming at you talking about entrepreneurship, right? What is this concept of being an entrepreneur, somebody who owns their time, their talents, and their strengths and applies them very strategically and impactfully inside an organization? So that's what we're going to focus on. So I brought 3 people who I know who are doing this really well and have done this really well in their career. So can we do quick introductions? Kelly, we'll start with you. Share your name and how are you using your energy these days?
It's a great question. My name's Kelly Shafer. I would say I'm using my energy to be open and curious. So I'll leave it at that for now. Just keep it real broad.
Great.
Open and curious.
Thanks, Kelly. Adam.
Good afternoon, morning, whenever you're listening to this. My name is Adam Gabornitz, and how I'm using my energy right now is to lead with love.
Whew. Guys are giving me the chills. Andrew, you got to top all that.
Yeah, I'm going to take a left turn here. My name is Andrew Metz. I am using my physical energy in ways I've never done before, and I'm doing things athletically I've never done before. And that has felt very empowering in other areas of my life.
Oof. Are you back to running?
Yes, it has been running, and
Okay.
I've been on a physical journey for a while now. But I've had moments where I feel very grateful for what I can do at my age, and I'm doing things I've never done before, which is really empowering. And it translates into other areas. It's not really about running, but that happens to be the catalyst for a lot of other things, and that's been true for my journey in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like, if I can do this, what else can I do?
It's exactly what it is. Yeah, and it started 3 years ago in that sense, but I'm just physically doing, and I've always been an athlete, but at some point that fell off. But I literally at 37, I just ran my fastest mile, and sometimes and things, but it's empowering, and it also I've had a lot of this sounds like a selfish thing. I know it's about entrepreneurship, but I really am questioning whether I've hit my ceiling or I've tried hard to even find it. And that goes for all aspects of my life.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you, the 3 of you, for answering. I love just to see how people answer that question. And so we had a little bit of a variety there, which I think is indicative to, look, there's no one way to be an entrepreneur. This is about taking ownership. And when I think about entrepreneurs, I look at preneur as a whole sort of approach to the way that we live. And look, I was raised by hippies, so I want to leave an impact where I am. And I work with entrepreneurs who do that, and I work with entrepreneurs who do that. And the 3 of you are doing that so well. You can leverage your energy for maximum impact. So I want to open up and just see where you guys take this. When you think about your career, and that spans a lot, right? You can go all the way back to 14 years old when I started at Taco Bell. I don't care where you go back to, but this concept of entrepreneurship, where do you see it sort of peaking for you? When do you think that sort of clicked, that I'm choosing to own my time, my talents, and I want to have a say in how I apply them?
I have some thoughts. I don't want to talk the whole time. I really want to listen. But I started as an individual contributor at my current organization, and I did cold calling, lead generation for about 2 years. And one of the things that I am telling to my younger in their career counterparts is, you can be a leader as an individual contributor. And I don't think I got it until I had the opportunity to lead my first team, and I had 6 sales reps underneath me. And then I thought, okay, shoot, the way they look, the way they perform, the way they carry themselves is a reflection of me. But I think what I've learned in retrospect is that, you can be a leader and you can make a positive impact, even if you're, and this is kind of a sales term, like an individual contributor, because ultimately, people are going to, you can lead by example, even if you're not leading a team. And that's advice I would have given my 24-year-old self. It's clear to me now, but I felt like on the org chart, I needed people underneath me to feel like I was a leader. And that was some naive perspective early on.
Yeah, for me, it was very specific. So I would say probably around this 2014, 2015 timeframe, as I jumped into entrepreneurship formally. And it was always a recognition that the power lies within ourselves to make the choices that we want to make and ultimately control our own destiny, even though that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But for me, it was really being able to figure out what it meant to actually be an entrepreneur in at least one form or fashion. Then as I came back into more of the corporate sector, recognizing what I always knew to be true and really owning that a little bit more. So yeah, I would probably say around that 2014, 2015 timeframe, especially the terminology of intrapreneur too. I feel like it wasn't all that popular if you go back prior to like 2016-ish. So yeah, I think I probably knew what I wanted to do with it before I even knew the term, but let's call it 2014-ish.
You're muted.
I coughed and then I muted myself. You're on mute. I think, Adam, what you shared of this like journey from going in-house to outside, right? So technically, you know, moving from employee to owner, business owner, and then choosing to come back in. We see that happen. There's those entrepreneurs who've gone out and in and used their skills. And I think that's a great example of how you can do it. And then there's people that just stay steady inside and have decided to leverage that. I want to come back, Adam, later, and I want to hear sort of about some of that journey.
Sure.
But Kelly, what about you when you think through like that when did it click for you?
Yeah, I would say, so mine's a little bit different answer because it's kind of personal, but it definitely affected how I show up at work. So I had kind of a health scare about, I'm trying to think, even 5 years ago now. And I had to leave work for like 9 months to kind of figure out what was going on with my health. Metz is very aware of this because we had worked together at the time. And so I left without having a job just because I physically couldn't show up to work anymore. And the experience of that was a really interesting, like, identity shattering thing. I'll say now I'm fine. I figured it out. I have treatment. I'm great. I feel better than ever. But I had really hung my identity on my career prior to that happening. And when that's taken away, then you're kind of like, well, who am I? So now I think of my identity in a really, really different way. And I got to, you know, kind of go into different layers of myself and figure out like, who am I? And that allows me to show up a lot more authentically at work versus showing up and being like, these are the things that I'm told to do. These are the boxes that I'm checking. I can show up more authentically because I'm obviously will be learning who I am my whole life, but I feel like I have a better handle than I did before the health problems. And so I can come into a workplace, bring my authentic self. And that has led to a lot more curiosity. And that has led to a lot more, you know, following my genuine interests and things like that. So I hope that answers it. I know it's a little.
It does.
Okay.
It does. I think, you know, we usually have these like awakening moments, right? Something that will happen.
I just want to piggyback off of that, Kelly. Thanks for sharing. It's so weird in retrospect, just hearing you say all that, like me living through it, not quite totally understanding. And then like, we kind of kept the friendship, and I'm just like so grateful that we're on this call now. It's pretty cool the way life works sometimes.
Yeah.
One of the things that I preach to my team, and I'm going on my 13th year at my organization, and I manage a team of 24 sales reps. I have 3 managers that help me do it. But one of the things I'm kind of quick to tell people on my team that I think they're shocked by, to Kelly's point about being authentic, and is basically that I tell them that like my self-worth is not wrapped up in my corporate title, identity, or paycheck. And I think sometimes they're surprised to hear that with a vice president title, and I'm supposed to be, you know, Mr. Corporate and all this stuff. And, you know, I'm the first person to remind them we're just selling usernames and passwords, and like not to overthink it. And I definitely take what I do seriously, and I try to do it in a high character fashion, but I'm quick to just put the perspective in of like, you know, what I value and what I, you know, when my head hits the pillow, it's about being a husband, being a father, about being a good steward of the opportunities I have, but also, you know, being a role model to the team that I lead, and hopefully lead by example. But, you know, my corporate job, it certainly takes up a lot of hours in my day, but it's probably 3rd or 4th on the priority list of things that I think I need to take care of long term. And I think just telling people that, I take the pressure off of some sales rep that thinks they need to work 100 hours a week, and really just trying to treat, when we talk about being entrepreneurs like you and I've had a lot of conversations about this, it's about owning your team, but making sure not just that they're performing on the numbers, but that they like working for you, that they feel like you got their back. And I mean, I actually sent an email out to my managers. I'm like, put time on your calendar to exercise, like block it out. Don't let people book meetings over. And I don't know, maybe someone would yell at me, but I would challenge them to say, we are trying to treat the whole person. And there's probably an ROI case in that, which I don't really care about. At some point, I just know that if people truly think I care about them, which I do, then they're going to work really hard. And if they think I'm working for them, they're going to work hard for me. Right. And so it doesn't need to be this, I yell and you jump and, hey, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. I just think we just start treating people like we do our friends outside of organizations. And yeah, there's lines we need to toe and tough conversations I have, and I do all those. But at the end of the time, I try to show as much compassion, empathy, and understanding of where they're coming from. And in my 8 years of sales leadership, and I work for a private equity firm, I'm on my third private equity company. Kelly can tell you it's cutthroat. I've made really great friends. I've had great employees. And I have a ton of people outside of the organization that I still keep in touch with. And I think that's a testament to that. It wasn't just about driving numbers and bringing in revenue. It's about, building, it's about long-term relationships and who we're all going to be friends with, 30 years from now.
Yeah. I think you hit on two things, Andrew, that resonates with me on my research and conversations with entrepreneurs over the past few years is there's something sort of bigger that tends to pull the most impactful entrepreneurs. I'm a believer that we could all act like entrepreneurs and we could practice that, but there's some that will be more impactful with that. Those that are most impactful tend to have something bigger that they're moving towards, like a purpose, right? Even if they're not exactly clear, it's that detachment and that fear that like this thing that you have needs to be forever. Right. So there's like, I don't have to have this career. I'm confident enough, or I don't know what it is. Adam, does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. One of the things that you said, I think is the most important piece, that confidence piece. And there's a thin line between love and hate. There's a thin line between confidence and cockiness, and that ability to toe those different lines. And I would also make the case that also changes depending on where you are in your stages of your life, your career, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, Kelly, what you said about the physical inability to go to work for 9 months. If that doesn't change your perspective on the world, I'm not sure what does. And you clearly alluded to the fact that it did. So when we think about some of the confidence piece and the ability to sort of own our careers, that could happen whether or not you have your name on the door or you're someone who's employed or whatever it may be. And I think it goes back to almost this self-worth and this self-understanding. So one of the things I said at the beginning is it's sort of trying to lead with love. And one of the things I feel like that has been very evident over this last year and some change now is that we need more caring for each other. We also need more caring for ourselves. Andrew, I know when we were off the call, or as we were starting the call, you're talking about getting back into running and stuff like that. So I think some of the confidence comes from taking care of ourselves, and sort of this analogy of you can't pour from an empty cup. If we're taking good care of ourselves, if we're confident in ourselves, we're probably going to extend some of that same thing to folks externally, and that's going to help them be successful, help us be successful, whether you're an entrepreneur or something in between. So I think that confidence is something that really resonates with me.
Yeah, I think foundationally, what you're saying, Adam, about the cup analogy, I always say I can't give what I don't have. Mm-hmm. And to me, and a lot of this testament goes to my wife, who my wife is we were high school sweethearts. We've been together for 20 plus years, and I've always been really fortunate to have a fairly stable personal life, but I think that's allowed me to deal with other people's stuff, to be quite candid, and just take it all in stride, because I've been so fortunate to have foundationally things that are like, I don't have my own drama I'm bringing to work, so I can just kind of deal with other people's drama and hopefully put it in perspective. And I've always appreciated that. But to your point, and when you talked about this past year and taking care of ourselves, and I've talked a lot. I'm just big into lead by example. Like, I'm not going to tell a bunch of people what to do. I'm just going to go do it. And then I get people coming to me asking about it. And to me, that's a much more attractive way to sell things. And I sell things for a living. I don't sell people. People come to me to buy things. Mm-hmm. And, we were talking about running, and it was kind of physical capacity. And I've been pretty public about alcohol on LinkedIn. I'm about 20 months dry as a former daily drinker. And I talked about kind of that journey. And I ran 4 interviews already today. It's been a crazy day already. It started early. And one of the candidates, they see my LinkedIn stuff, but that's what he wanted to talk about the whole time. And he was like a 25-year-old guy out in California. And he's like, man, I just really admire that you talk about this and your journey and this and that. And so once again, it's that attractive quality of not me going, hey, everyone, you should or shouldn't do this. And for the record, I think, everyone's got to do what's right for them. But if I can go talk about some of the benefits I've received from taking care of my mental health or my physical health, or how I run my personal relationships. And if people find that attractive, to your point, I can't give what I don't have. If my mental health is a mess and my physical health's a mess and my personal home life's a mess, then I can't be a good example of any of those things. So it definitely keeps me honest, but at the same time, it's like, I will be able to give to people in a lot of ways, whether it's time, wisdom, finances, if I have all my stuff in order. So I kind of worry about myself first, and then I can go give to others.
Can I share a thought on this? So one thing is, it's like the oxygen mask analogy, right? You need to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help others. Yep. And I definitely believe that. I'm also thinking about, and I'm wondering if you'll welcome a little friction on the topic of intrapreneurship. So, okay. So I was not raised by hippies, but I kind of became one regardless. So I always have had like a little bit of a natural aversion to the man and to authority. And that's just in my DNA somehow. So when I think about this idea, it's really like, I think from what I'm learning about intrapreneurship, it sounds like having an ownership mentality, right? Where it's like, if I owned this business, what would I do? I worked at a recruiting firm once where they really talked about this ownership mentality. And they even talked about it to the level of, if you see garbage on the floor, if you were an owner, you'd pick it up. Okay. So here's where my little bit of friction is going to come in, is because are they treating me like I'm an owner? Is the employer treating me like I'm an owner? Am I being given decision-making power? Am I being given a voice at the equal level of the owner? Most likely not. So I don't ever want, like, one of my mantras is always do your best. It's always going to come back to you. Always, always, always do your best. However, I get a little bit like you can see there's a little fire in me about when it's like, well, have an ownership mentality, give 100%. And I'm like, well, why should I act like an owner if I'm not being treated like an owner?
Oof, yes, this is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that.
Can I give two things? And then I really want to hear Adam and Andrew on this too.
I like that.
It's one of the reasons why I talk about being an intrapreneur and not having an ownership mindset, because after 19 years in-house and 5 years out on my own and trying to build a team and having people come in and out of my team, it is completely unrealistic to expect them to act like an owner. Right? I mean, I can tell them I didn't take a paycheck last year while I paid you during the pandemic, and maybe that feels good to them. I feel like I should be honest about that, but I don't know what that's really supposed to change in them. I want them not to own my company. I want them to own their individual time and talents and strengths. I want them to say, I'm not going to go out like a punk here. I'm going to maximize my impact for however long, if it's 6 months or 6 years, I'm going to do the best for me. Like for them, actually individual. I think the concept of intrapreneurship is so individualized. And
I love that.
So that's why I chose that. And then let me go to the second point. It's also why the majority of my work is with the companies to change the ecosystem, because I do believe that it has to go both ways. I can fire everybody up and be like, yeah, we're going to be intrapreneurs and I'm going to own it. And then I hear back from them. They hit that wall every day because the ecosystem doesn't exist. And I experienced that. I was brought in everywhere I went. I was recruited to be a change agent. I was recruited to be the intrapreneur. And the example that I use is I was recruited and I said, oh, wait, you're a company of apples and I'm a banana. And then they said, no, but we want a banana. We want a banana. We want you to help turn the apples into bananas. So then I get in there and all the apples are like, who's this banana? And who does she think she is? Right. So there's the ecosystem. As much as I tried to be the banana and be true to myself, and even maybe just like positively say, like, you don't have to be a banana, but what if you adopted some of these mindsets? It was really, really hard if the structure wasn't there. If the
I'm getting like I'm getting like a garden analogy. Like I can be my great little plant, but if the soil is just not there, how can I grow?
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to hear it from you too. I want to come back to the individual in a minute, because I think there's some advice that we could give to the individual that's sitting in that garden in the crappy soil. But what do Adam and Andrew, what do you guys think of this? Like, what does the system need to do?
Oh, there's a lot of things that the system needs to do. A lot of things that the system needs to do. And one of the things that when I think about the systems are simply things that have been put in place by people. So at the end of the day, 100% of employees are people.
Yeah.
These systems, these corporations, these institutions, whatever it may be, are simply makeups of individuals. So it's funny because there's I don't know, something that you'll hear occasionally, like you can't hold companies responsible for certain things. So the company's not actually a thing. And my argument is, yeah, of course it is. It's a collection of people. And I think the biggest thing when I think about entrepreneurship and I think about the ownership piece, it's exactly what you said, Anna. It's ownership of self.
Yeah.
It's recognizing the responsibility, then the opportunity that I have as an individual to chart my own course. Mm-hmm. And if that means treating the organization that I'm working for as my own and picking up that piece of garbage, if it means that when I'm going home and I put the kids to bed, that I'm spending a couple hours learning how to code because I ultimately want to be a software engineer, I'm making this up. To me, that's what I think about when I think about ownership. It's not that it can't be a conversation if I feel like I own the company, but to me, it's very, very much an individualistic thing. And I would say that most companies don't do a good job of cultivating the banana if there's a bunch of apples. Because the reality of it is, let's be real about it.
They can't.
Not only can they not, but a lot of companies don't actually want that.
Yeah.
Right? Innovation sounds real cool on a bumper sticker, but when the rubber meets the road, and when innovation means I'm going to run left when you've been going right for the last 50 years, a lot of people don't actually want that. So I think that's where, again, if we talk about ownership of self, it comes back to saying, if I recognize that, what's my responsibility to either continue on that path or go elsewhere or figure out what I kind of need to do. So that's what I think about when I think about ownership. It's myself when I look myself in the mirror.
Regardless of the soil around you, saying, I'm going to choose to, I always say, like, milk the crap out of where you're at, right? And it's a mutual benefit. You're going to contribute a lot. It's to what you got hired for, and you are going to get prepared for your best next, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Whatever that is. Whatever Andrew, what do you got?
Well, when I think about like owning my team, I set way higher expectations for myself than I would for the people that maybe just came into the organization 6 weeks ago. If I've been there a decade, I probably have more skin in the game. Yeah. And I just think in general, you know, a good way to live for me is like, I have higher expectations for myself than I do for others. And then usually I'm not disappointed. Like I'll send texts out to people and say, hey, I love you. I hope you're doing well. You don't need to write back. And if they never write back, I'm like, why didn't they write back? And I think if I treat my organization that way, where I try to give, and I'm not expecting the same output, just holding myself to a higher standard, usually I'm not disappointed. So to me, it's setting expectations. And what I would say is like, Anna, for your own business, it would be crazy to think that your employees would care more about the business more than you. It's your business, right?
No one's going to care. Yeah.
No one's going to care about it more than you. And I view the same thing with my 24-person team and my 3 regional managers. Is basically, it would be kind of crazy if they cared more about it, if they felt like they need to pick up more trash than me. I'm the one that should be picking up the trash. And I think too, it's the servant leadership mindset. I was just talking to my CRO about this yesterday. He was in town from Cincinnati, and I just said, we were shooting text back and forth, and I just said, if I take care of my people, if I am working for them, they'll want to work for me, right? But it's not like you work for me and I bark orders. Like no one wants that. So it's just kind of that reciprocating, leading by example. And I wouldn't have the expectation that someone would care more about my business than they would.
Right. And that kind of takes us to why we're not saying that you should act like owners. I want you to own your own space. I want you to own your dance space and just maximize it and leverage it for all it's worth. Right, Adam?
And I want to go back to one of the things that Kelly said, and I love that you used the man analogy. I thought that was great. That was definitely very, very hippie-ish. I was sort of pseudo raised by hippies, I think, as well. But I think that there's a spectrum of entrepreneurship.
Oh yeah.
Meaning that you can definitely be the person that is treating the business that isn't yours as yours every single day. And that can be your path. And then there can be other people that say, I'm going to come to work. I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to clock out at 4 p.m., go home and do my thing and come back. And Andrew, I'm going to be a top performing sales rep on your team. I might not be the top guy in the nation, but I've done good for myself and I've had a good career. And when I think about this idea of entrepreneurship, and this is one of the challenges, entrepreneurship, excuse me, this is one of the challenges when we label things, right? And I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole with this because this is an 8-hour conversation. But the whole point of it being is if we're labeling something as this, then it's because we're trying to define it. And I think for anybody who's really owned their career from an entrepreneurial perspective, or certainly from an entrepreneurial perspective, you can set your course any way you want, but life has an interesting way of throwing you some curveballs. So the recognition of saying that this is the spectrum that we exist on, and depending on where I am, my position on that can change. And that also being okay. So I'll use one quick example, but I think we've all had these perceptions and ideas of where our career might go, where relationships might go. And I loved what you said, Andrew, of disappointment if I send out a text and nobody responds back. If I don't bring that to the conversation, I can save myself a lot of heartache and headache. If I set my intention for a thing and it doesn't quite work out that way, my responsibility is to figure out what to do with it. And I think that really goes back to ownership. And that might be, hey, I'm going to go and understand that I'm working for the man and do my thing. Or it might be that ultimately that's not what I want, but that's on you, right? That's on me. That's on Andrew or Anna. But it's a self thing, right? And I think that's what becomes challenging about this is I love being able to sit here and talk to y'all because you have amazing perspectives in the experience that you've had as individuals. And then for everybody that's out there listening, recognizing that this is a group of 4 people's experiences. And it doesn't invalidate anything that you've experienced or that you felt. And that recognition and ownership, I think also has to be that we've got to be a little bit of real with ourselves. And that can be hard.
It is hard. And I think it comes along with realistic expectations about what the workplace, no matter if you're on a 5-person team or a 50-person team or a 500-person team, you have to have realistic expectations. Expecting that your boss, and Andrew, most leaders are not like you. You think humanity and performance, you're right. 2 out of 10 leaders are probably going to be like that. The other 8 to 7, not so much, right? So we have to know realistically what most leaders pulled in a lot of different directions, don't have the skill set, don't have the right mentality. So not only right expectations for your leader, but right expectations for the system, right? Adam, you're in a big organization right now. I worked at Baird, you're Northwestern Mutual. I worked at Manpower Global. Whether it's big or small, expecting that company to cater to even the 4 of us who have high demands, they can't do that. It's like expecting your life partner to be the one that completes you. It doesn't work that way. We have to find the individual motivation that says, regardless of that soil, I choose to be a flower that's going to shine really bright and make the impact that I want to make. And to Adam's point, that could be this, that could be this, that could be this. Like, it's not more or better. It's just different. And I didn't really approach my 19 years in house like, I'm an entrepreneur. I only looked back when I gave my TEDx talk thinking like, how do I give this advice to people who are always asking, is this what I should be doing? And if so, what's next? We have to be able to have that sort of perspective that regardless of what's going to happen, you can gun for that role if you want. You can just say that I'm going to do this job and work for Andrew every day, and that's fine. But just do it to your best, right? Maximize your impact. And those expectations, it's like, look, I say the grass is not greener on the other side. It's a different color and there's always dog poop in the yard. So we should all get to work and pick it up. Like, I do believe that that's all of our jobs, right? To pick it up. Or you can complain about it, but then you're making a decision about the impact that you're having now and how well you're going to be preparing for your best next.
I think the biggest challenge maybe is just developing that internal compass.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe it's, I don't know if gender plays a role in this. I think it's possible it could. But if we're in a system, we want to follow what we want to go with the flow of the system and just with what society says you should do with your career and all of those things. And so if all of these things start to pile up and cover up like that base internal compass, that it can be hard to make decisions that support your personal growth.
we got to stick with this, because Kelly, you were reading my mind, because as you said the gender piece of it, this was in my head. And this was, if we're talking to a diverse audience of people, like I'm sure we are, men, women, some who identify as other than that, then do you feel as women, so I'm going to throw this back to Anna, I'm going to throw this back to Kelly, do you all feel like, and not necessarily in comparison, comparison's a thief of joy, right? We don't want to get too deep into that, but do you all feel as women that perhaps, or there are very specific scenarios in which maybe you didn't feel as empowered to own certain things, speak in certain ways, act in certain ways that perhaps an Andrew did, or maybe an Adam did? And how does that play into your ownership when you don't feel maybe things are as equitable as they could be?
Kelly?
I was just gonna go Anna.
I could go first, right? I mean,
I'll share. There's I'm not saying anything new here. There's been a million studies that have shown these things, but I definitely have experience in the workplace sharing an idea, having no reaction, having a man share it a month later, celebration fireworks. Cool. So that can be, of course, extremely frustrating, invalidating, and like you're not being seen. I always am on the fence about, is that playing the victim, or are these important things that need to be acknowledged and called out? And I go, it's like, I go very much back and forth. So part of me is like, well, figure out another way to say it. Figure out another way to get their ear better. But there's enough studies that show that that happens, that I think it's just a little bit of both. Yeah.
And I will say, based on my own experience and my research as a practitioner, Adam, that bias plays a role in this for sure, right? So whatever bias that the person holds, right? So I was in financial services, a lot of white males, right? And I was the only female at the table. But then when I coach persons of color, or I, coach people who are transgendered, or I coach people who are introverted and work in a really extroverted environment. I mean, I came into a very high caring environment, and I am very much a driver. So that's that apple versus that banana. So even again, like the bias against me was like, oh, who is this woman? Even when I was playing small, I was already too big for them. Right. So there is a little bit of this, goes back to that original, what we were saying a little bit ago, that confidence that you need to have. I call it the swagger, that I want people to reclaim their swagger that says, I'm not going to be a bull in a china shop. I'm not going to act like a complete jerk, but I am going to make an impact here. I want to make an impact, whatever that looks like for you. That can look like this, that can look like that, but you have to define how you want to make an impact. And then you have to work for that. As long as that color grass and that dog poop that's realistically going to be in that yard, because it's going to be in the next color grass that you choose, as long as that grass is still okay for you, it doesn't become toxic and you don't get too tired of it and realize that you're coasting again, then I think you need to make a change.
I have so many thoughts on this. I and again, this is like, I go back and forth. I have a lot of, I understand there's nuance. It's not like a, whatever. But I remember when I work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, as Adam does. And when I was first getting into this, I met with a consultant, and I was like, I want to do trainings about imposter syndrome and teaching women to negotiate. And I'm like, let's go. And she reframed that in a really powerful way for me. And her reframe was, stop trying to fix the women, fix the institution, stop trying to fix the women. Don't teach them how to negotiate pay. Don't give extroverts more pay. Have pay equity in the system, And so if we know more women have imposter syndrome, why do you think that is? Imposter syndrome means you feel like you don't belong. If you're at a table with all men, of course you feel like you don't belong. So I get really passionate about not fixing women, but looking at the whole system. And I think it's really, if we really want it to be inclusive, that has to be considered.
And I think I'm pulling back the curtain. This is sort of a Wizard of Oz moment where you're seeing the guy behind the guy. Like, guys, that is why the bulk of my work is done with the system, because I do want to change the system. And I'm realistic, Kelly.
Yes.
after 24 years of doing this work, that's going to take a long time. And I'm not going to give up. I'm going to continue to put my work there.
But for now, it has to be both.
That's why this conversation, that's why the concept of intrapreneurship is so important to me, to, even though I don't make my bread and butter off of talking to intrapreneurs, I'm going to keep doing it because they need to hear this message. They need to hear that regardless of your grass, that you can choose to shine brightly, that you can have an impact, that you get to make these choices and you own your career. If you're miserable and you've been miserable for 5 years, first of all, I say, unless it's toxic, double down, take your blinders off, because you've put these blinders on and they've firmly been placed. Take your blinders off and start to look around. Is there anything else that you have not maximized that you could still learn or do or contribute to? And then when you feel like that, either it's toxic or you can't do that anymore, then it's probably time to go find a new color grass.
Can I add something real quick? Kelly, it's just so interesting hearing you talk. And one of the things I want to say to you is that, I hired you to be a leader on an inside sales team. And we talk about fixing the system and fighting the man, but you are doing it by being a leader amongst 10 other salespeople that are seeing a strong female leader doing her thing. And for all you've inspired a lot of other people in that capacity as well. So one of the things I just think about, we use the word ownership, and to me, it's like, it's owning the good, the bad, the ugly. But I also say, regardless of what a CEO is saying or how an executive team reacts, I always implore up to my managers, like, you can just work, you can make the 8 people that roll up to you feel awesome, and you can make them feel like they're taken care of. And I want to do the same thing for my 3 regional managers and their people. And to some degree, it's like we can just we can kind of separate from maybe what's going on up top to some degree to go, this still feels like an awesome inclusive space, and I'm happy to work in this environment because we create the environment on how we treat people and how we listen to people. And one of the things that we just got an exercise done that I've been rolling out is the 5 appreciations, workplace appreciations. And it's like, do people, especially during COVID, because quality time hasn't really been a thing anymore. So it's like, do people want, do they want gifts? Do they want service, acts of service, recognition? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm blanking here. But the idea here is words of affirmation, quality time, all those things. And so I've really challenged my managers on, regardless of what everyone's feeling about this organization up top. And to Anna's point, I think it's really interesting. You're saying double down. I'm kind of like, go find something that works great for you, and maybe we could have that conversation. But like Anna, you've also like gone out into like the free market as an entrepreneur and done something awesome, right? So you're leading by example in your own way. But I think like I think to your point, Anna, like you said, I've been doing this for 20 some years. It's hard to change a system, and let's not lose focus of what's important. But in the meantime, what can we do today? Exactly. And that's kind of owning what we have in front of us.
Yeah, we all have control over ourselves, first of all. Like, let's remember that. And that comes from that self-awareness that you mentioned earlier, Adam, and that confidence is just that. And I think each of you hit on this earlier, but you have perspective. I feel like the 3 of you, for different reasons, right? Kelly, your health issues, and Adam or Andrew, your family, and Adam, this entrepreneurial perspective. And I know your family too, but these things that give us perspective that go like, oh, even if I lost this job or this thing, or I couldn't do this anymore, I know I could do other things. I can come up with ideas. I can make an impact in this world regardless of that role. And I think just sometimes that knowledge removes a lot of that pressure that people are feeling to perform in that system. Kelly, to your point of, I have to be an apple, I have to be an apple, like still be a banana, but like just accept that you're going to be a banana in those apples for as long as you're going to be there. And by the way, even in that analogy earlier, all those people were not apples. They acted like apples.
Costumes.
They wanted to be, they knew the system wanted them to be apples. So they were being apples. I would love to go back to that exact group and say, I'm a banana. Yeah. You 6, you want to be apples. Cool. But you 3 are oranges. You definitely want to be oranges, right? Like, I just think that it comes back to the diversity. It comes back to the self-acceptance. It comes back to leveraging our individual strengths. And as much as I want to change the system, regardless of that system, we can own our impact.
And I think it's come a long way. I I think I'm being a little extra spicy just for the sake of discussion. I mean, I'd believe the things I'm saying, but I do think we have a lot of power in our own, like in our mind. It's really, that's the biggest thing, is how are we controlling our mindset? So it's all the things. I think it can be all the things. It can be, let's do the best we can now. Let's see, I like the way you put it, like, what can I learn from this? And how can we look at the system and improve it?
Because what if we all looked at our roles, if we looked at our jobs and said, like, I get paid to learn and grow and get ready for my best next.
Yeah.
Like what a mindset shift that could be
Totally.
for all of us as individuals.
Yeah, I think that was one of my huge reframes after my health scare, was not why is this happening to me, but what can I learn from this? And that just, now I apply that to like every failure or thing that happens that I don't like or whatever, is not like, why me? But
gratitude.
Yeah.
I love that. I like that you said, Andrew, but Kelly and Anna, thank you for sharing your perspective. When I was talking about sort of that the gender piece of it, where it can come into play. And Kelly, for what it's worth, I couldn't agree with you more. There is this interesting balance between how do we take ownership as individuals, and also we recognize that the system really wasn't built for everyone.
Yeah.
I think that if we can't recognize the water in which we swim, we have a whole lot of other challenges to talk about. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. And when I think about the role that we have, and kind of going back to this idea of ownership, I think about the ownership that we have and the responsibility that we have to ourselves, and then that responsibility that we have to help make other people's lives better, or we're wasting our time. And if that means that Kelly is feeling a certain way because I jumped in and stole her idea a month later, and we had a fireworks party? Is that what you said?
It's not, yeah,
that's great. I love
or fireworks.
I want a fireworks party, but I don't want it at the cost of marginalizing somebody that I worked with, or making someone else feel as though they didn't have the same level of worthiness as anybody else in that room. So when I think about intrapreneurship, not only is it about owning things for ourselves, but it's about what's our responsibility to other people. And I think one of the things that we talk about a great deal, and this has been kind of throughout my career as I've worked a lot with people in kind of the talent space, is that if we are creating environments for ourselves to show up in our best form, and for the people around us to do the same thing, we're going to not only enjoy our experiences more, but we're going to have a more successful business. So even though I spent a lot of times in the sales space, and Aaron, knowing you, I'm sure that you subscribe to this as well. If you're taking care of your people, the profit is there, right? And you're not having to always chase this thing. So the word that I often think of is intentionality. So how are we intentionally moving through our spaces for ourselves, for our friends, for our families, and our communities? And if people feel like things could be different, or things could be better, I think we have a responsibility to help improve those things. Again, there's a spectrum though, right? It looks different for depending on where we are with that. But yeah, I have the luxury of working on a team of all women. It's me and 6 other tremendous women with a whole variety of different backgrounds, experiences, and it's a joy to be able to work with them consistently. And I also see the luxury that I have in some situations to show up a little bit differently, or not to think about this or think about that. And for me personally, I want an environment in which all of us can show up as our authentic selves. To me, that feels very intrapreneurial, but we've got some work to do.
I feel like the concept of intrapreneurship is very closely related to DE&I, to creating a system that you could feel like you belong, and that your individual strengths could actually be leveraged. That's my hope. And the more people we get empowered, the more individuals that sit up straighter and claim even a fraction more of their talents and their strength, we are going to improve better life, better work, or better work, better life. We're going to improve them individually, and we're going to improve the system. So I heard from you, Adam, intentionality, right? I was going to ask, like, what's that one thing that probably was the indicator for you in your own entrepreneur journey, but the advice also. So Adam, thank you for that. Kelly, what would you say?
For what my advice would be?
Yeah, like when you look back, if they could focus on maybe one word or phrase or piece of advice that you would give to others.
I wouldn't say I'm known for my brevity, so I don't think I can do one word, but I would say like continue to peel away anything that gets in the way of your internal compass. Get quiet. Hear what you're your internal compass has to say.
Love that internal compass. I think that's great. Andrew, what about you?
Similar to Kelly, but more in an external way, is listen.
Mhm.
You know, I think sometimes one of the mistakes I made early on in the career was, well, I thought when I ran a team, it was the Andrew Metz show. And what I found out was it's really got nothing to do with me, and there's no reason for me to be in the spotlight. It's just simply trying to understand what do people need and then giving them what they need. And that's different for every person.
Yeah. And that listening, Andrew, when I gave the TEDx talk and when people ask for advice, these are still the three things that I say. If you want to get better at making an impact, if you want to adopt more of an entrepreneurial mindset, be curious, get better at storytelling, and practice pitching. Because you're not you got to move ideas forward. You got to know how the system wants you to pitch ideas and move them forward, right? So you hit that. If you had to add something to that list, guys, of skills, like just one skill that somebody could start practicing, I say it's storytelling, it's curiosity, it's pitching. What would you guys add to the list?
I can't tell if it's just because Andrew said it, but I think like seeking to understand, listening and seeking to understand.
Okay.
Massive self-reflection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really an ability to go deep within yourself to understand you. Self-reflection is a skill.
Yeah. Yeah. And that self-reflection leads to that self-awareness. Number one predictor of success for CEOs, right? Cornell University did that study. Not strategic thinking, not charisma, not any of that. Self-awareness. How much do you know who you are?
Yeah.
Andrew?
I don't know if I have another one. I was thinking about a couple things as Adam and Kelly were talking, but I don't know if I have anything else to add.
Yeah,
I think
really around that curiosity. I think that listening and curiosity is so great for you as an entrepreneurial leader too.
I think you're like, I've worked for you, so I can say like what I observed, and like your humanity and your care, like you have you genuinely care about people. And I think that's important.
Thanks for saying that, Kelly. I know this whole time Kelly's just been bashing organization. She's been talking about me. I think to your point, I mean, that to me, that kind of wraps into listen, but this is one of the things I say a lot. And I mean, maybe it's self, maybe it's a little narcissistic to say, but I truly believe, I love that I still get texts, emails, calls every day from people I used to work with. And I always think if we had a phony relationship and it was just, just about that point in time for us, like helping each other make money or whatever, then they wouldn't be reaching out 4 years later. So hopefully that's a testament to that, Kelly, but I really appreciate you saying that. And I think, unfortunately, maybe in the sales world that's missing at times. So I'll go ahead and buck the trend and try to do something different.
Love it.
Yeah. And I think that ownership of your impact positively impacts other people. Because what I don't want people to hear when we talk about this is that this is all about the hustle, that you've got to work like 200-hour work weeks, or that you have to like, shove people down on your way up. This is not about climbing the ladder. This is about owning your strength and making an impact. That's what this is about. Absolutely. So I think that's perfect. Guys, I really appreciate all of this. You've been beautiful. Thank you for being models of entrepreneur within your organizations now and wherever you go for your best next. We need more of this. And I'm just so appreciative.
Thanks for having the conversation and giving us the platform.
Thanks, guys. Great chatting with you.
Of course. I'm sending everybody peace and progress on the journey.